A very good morning to all my dear friends. I am Prashant Bhavani. I hope you're doing good. Today is 22nd November. The day is Thursday. And before moving ahead, I would like to inform all of you that as far as my health is concerned, I have got a little bit of viral fever, cold and cough. So my voice is not at its best, and you may find a little bit of pauses as well in this lecture. So bear with me, right? Something that is completely out of my control, but I thought that rather than taking a day off, it is better to have a brief discussion on the things that we have got on our table, isn't it? So let's start. Now, before moving ahead, I would like to inform all of you that our Pendrive and tablet courses are available for various different exams. To find out more about it, do check out StudyIQ.com. Flat 60% off is available at present, and this is going to last till 28th of November. Now, we have a few important articles to go through. The first one and the most important article is this one, The Post and the Person. This one is written by an ex-IAS officer. Yesterday, we were talking about institutions. A couple of days ago as well, we were talking about institutions. So I'm sure we all are aware about this thing, that when it comes to an individual and when it comes to an institution, of course, institutions or institution is one of the most important thing, right? People may come and go, but institutions are there forever or for a very long period of time. Now, in this article, the writer is talking about one important institution of our country, and it is Election Commission of India. I'm sure we are aware about this thing, that Election Commission of India looks after a couple of elections, right, that takes place in our country. The reason why I'm not throwing some more light on this thing is because I have a question for you guys based on this thing. Types of various different elections that are looked after by or supervised and directed and controlled by Election Commission of India. So at the end of this lecture, you will get this question, but let's go through the reason. What is the main reason why we have this particular topic as part of current affairs? Is because a PIL is being examined by Supreme Court, right? A constitutional bench of Supreme Court is going through a PIL that is filed in the apex court of our country, and the main proposal here is to create an independent mechanism to appoint CEC and ECs. So let me throw some more light on CEC and ECs. So we have one Chief Election Commissioner, right? Just one person, Chief Election Commissioner. So that's a CEC. And then we have two election commissioners in Election Commission of India. So the main man, the main person, the main boss here is, of course, Chief Election Commissioner, and then you have two election commissioners. So when it comes to appointment of these three commissioners, CEC or ECs, it is done by President of our country. So you can say that simply appointed by the government of the day without any defined criteria or processes. What kind of person should look after this ECI or Central Election Commission? There is no sort of fixed definition for this thing or any sort of criteria for this thing. It is this government that will decide. So basically, president will appoint, right? Technically speaking, it is the president who will officially appoint Chief Election Commissioner or election commissioners, but we know that President works on the aid and advice of Prime Minister or Council of Minister headed by Prime Minister. So basically, Prime Minister is the main person here, right? Practically speaking, is the main man who will appoint CEC as well as ECs. So this is the system that we have been following for a very long period of time now, and this system was, it's not that we haven't talked about this thing in the past when we were creating our constitution. At that point of time, Constituent Assembly talked about, or there was a debate on this thing about elections, about free and fair election and who will conduct. free and fair elections in our country, whether free and fair elections should be part of fundamental rights or it should be looked after by an independent institution. So after, you can say, a sort of debate, it was finally decided that Election Commission of India, an independent body, will look after free and fair elections in our country, and Election Commission of India has made free and fair elections a reality in our country as well. Now, I must add here some positive points of Election Commission of India, that conducting election in country like India, where you have diversity in language, you have various difficult terrain, you have those places where you don't have electricity, you have those places where you have to literally carry this voting machine or this ballot paper box on your back, and you have to literally trek. When I say trek, I mean to say TREK. Right, you have to do trekking and stuff to reach to some of the most remote villages in our country. So even then, if we are conducting elections, general elections or state level elections, then that's something that should be appreciated. That's something that is outstanding. And there are so many countries out there in the world, right? Their election commissions do pop down into our country, and they do come here to learn so many things from ECI. That ink that we produce when you get that small mark in your nail when you cast your vote. If I'm not wrong, we are supplying that ink to some 20 plus countries around the world, like countries like USA, right? UK, they don't have this electronic voting machines, and they don't have this EVMs with VVPATs. We have these technologies, so it's not, so there are so many positive points as well associated with Election Commission of India, as well as free and fair elections that are conducted in our country. But that also means we have to also keep this thing in mind. That does not mean that we don't have any sort of malpractices that is going on, right? There was this big question that was decided by our Constituent Assembly, and this big question was, before moving on to big question, let me finish this thing, that we have some loopholes as well, and we need to sort out these loopholes, and that's what this PIL is all about. So before talking about loopholes, let's go through this second topic, or the second point as far as this ECI is concerned, or free and fair elections, or this structure of elections is concerned in our country. So it was decided, say when this debate was going on, so there was a big question like which body is going to look after elections in our country. So State Election Commission will look after state level or state legislature, and for Lok Sabha it will be central body or Election Commission of India, it was decided. But then a few points came into the mind of people who were debating this thing. They realized that ECI should be given this duty of looking after Lok Sabha as well as state legislature elections pertaining to state legislatures. A separate institution should be set up to conduct elections to state legislature. This demand was rejected because state election commissions, they are prone to governments or state governments influence. They can be manipulated. We find a shortage of manpower as well as funds when it comes to state elections at now as well. So at that point of time, these points were decided by Constituent Assembly. So this is something that is outstanding of our Constituent Assembly. It was decided that let a central institution look after this free and fair elections in our country. And when this power was given to Lok Sabha as well as state legislature, and there are two more elections that are looked after by ECI, so that is part of your question, so I'm not throwing light on that thing. So this 4 various elections are looked after by our election commission. So that's point number 2 that we find in this article. The third one, and again an important one, is this one, that when it comes to independence, right, still we find that ECI is not that independent. The reason why I'm saying it's not that independent is because we have seen various different cases, and as we know that the government of the day, the current government at any point of time will appoint chief election commissioner as well as ECs, and you cannot remove them. When I say you cannot, I mean to say that removing them is as difficult as removing a judge of a Supreme Court. So you have to pass this impeachment process if you want to remove a chief election commissioner, right? With ECs, things are different, but when you want to get rid of CEC, then you have to go through this impeachment process, which makes it a bit difficult or next to impossible. So tenure security is provided, but when you are appointing someone who is, you are appointing someone for whom you have a soft corner, or that person is having soft corner for your government, then it becomes very difficult to remove that person. It was back in 1966 when Election Commission of India approached the Supreme Court, and finally it was decided that judicial review is applicable on decisions taken by Election Commission of India, which is all right, because in democracy, right, we have this thing called checks and balance, and if a decision that is taken by Election Commission, and if it is not democratic, if it is illegal, then this thing can be fixed by or rectified by Supreme Court. This started since 1966. Now, about independence of ECI, this was argued by Sibban Lal Saxena, and Sibban Lal Saxena said that at that point of time he was part of this Constituent Assembly. So he said that Prime Minister argued that the current Prime Minister, means he was talking about Jawaharlal Nehru at that point of time, he said that he was a man of independence, and this may not always be the case. So you never know in future if we get a Prime Minister who is autocratic, let's say like after 5 years or maybe 10 years, you never know in future. If we get a Prime Minister, and I'm not digging into past, I don't want to get into this political debate who is more autocratic or who has been an autocratic Prime Minister. It's not important. The most important thing here is that there is every possibility that you may get a government or a Prime Minister who will not always support independence, and that person can appoint a person who is having soft corner for his government, his or her government, and this can impact free and fair election in our country. So this was argued by Sibban Lal Saxena, and he said that we should have, rather than government appointing chief election commissioners and election commissioners, a chief election commissioner as well as election commissioners, it is important to have a separate independent body. But this demand or this argument was not accepted by Constituent Assembly at that point of time. And later on, what we find is that from 1966 to 1991, things changed drastically in our country. We saw new political parties, political competition intensified, new political parties came into existence. This muscles, using muscles or using, heavy hand, use of money, fake news, booth capturing, crimes, criminals getting into politics, and all these things, started expanding, you can say, in our democracy. And today we know the state of our democracy, that if you have money and if you have muscle power, if you have combo of these two things, then there are every chances that you will win election. So it's a bit bad at present, to be honest. A common person cannot it becomes nearly impossible for a common person to stand and win an election. So there are a few changes that we require. There was a time when we used to have the CEC TN session, and TN session was outstanding. CEC, he was very strict, and he enforced this forceful leadership. There were so many big names, they lost their qualifications were cancelled by CEC. So this sort of proper leadership we got accidentally, right? It was not by design. So this is something that we cannot rely on. A good person, can come and go, and the validity of that person is for a very short period of time. But what we need to focus on is to improve this institution of ECI, and for that we need a sort of independence. So let's wait and watch for the stand of Supreme Court, but I'm sure we are going to find some sort of changes when it comes to this PIL and decision, as well as independence of this Election Commission of India is concerned. So that's everything. This one is number 1 as well as top priority article. Then we have this retweeting Brahminical patriarchy. So on your screen you can see this picture here, and on this picture you find it's written this smash Brahminical patriarchy. Now please don't take it negatively, right? This article is not about Brahmins. It's more about an ideology. What it is all about, we'll go through it. Now the person here that you can see on your screen is a CEO of Twitter. His name is Jack Dorsey. He was here in our country. He had a meeting with these ladies that you can see on your screen, right? These ladies are, some of them are journalists, some of them are activists, some of them are writers. So overall, this group, you can say, is quite a strong group of ladies, and they had a meeting with Jack Dorsey, and they gifted this picture, this poster to Jack Dorsey. And Jack Dorsey, as you can see, he's holding this picture, and they had a click. They took a photo. And as per Jack Dorsey, as per his explanation, he said that this was just as normal click. He was not aware about this damage, or not damage, but I would say the amount of rage that this particular poster will create. So Mr. Dorsey was accused of being a Brahmin hating and a racist bigot, and he was accused of propagating hatred towards people who beg your pardon constitute 5% or less of India's population. So Brahmins are 5% of less or less, or as far as our total population is concerned. Now the thing is, as I told you, this is not about a particular community called Brahmins. It is more about this Brahminism, and Brahminism refers not to members of Brahmin community, but it is this oppressive social order of caste. So it's an ideology, right? And this ideology was established by a feminist historian called Uma Chakravarti, and Uma Chakravarti said that this Brahminism, or this Brahminism patriarchy, Brahminical patriarchy, is about two things, right? The first one is gender hierarchy, and the second one is caste hierarchy. So as per this Brahminical patriarchy, females are inferior and males are superior. So this is one thing. This is gender hierarchy. And caste hierarchy, it says that Brahmins are, or Brahmin is the top caste in our country, and then you have other castes are below Brahmin caste. Now the thing is, caste is something that is quite unique system, that you find in our country. There are so many articles on this thing, and caste is of course an example of inequality that we find in our country. In our political life, when I say political life, I'm talking about our constitution. In our constitution, it is clearly given that you cannot discriminate any person based on his or her sex. That is, that person could be male or female, that person's caste or birthplace, or maybe that person's race. You cannot discriminate a person based on his or her caste. This is something that we find in our constitution, but in reality things are a bit different, as we all know, right? In reality we find this sort of casteism is still something that is prevalent in our country, and it is very sad, but things are changing, right? Things are changing, and education is there, and then we have this intercaste marriage, and the way socio-economic changes are going on in our country, particularly in city area, right? In metro cities, caste is something that is not that important at present, and we do realize this thing as well, that it is a person's personal personal caliber that matters rather than his or her caste. But still, this thing is quite old, and it's there in our Indian psyche. So it's going to be a bit difficult, not impossible, but it's going to be a bit difficult to accept this thing, because the funny thing about caste system is that every caste thinks that that caste is the best compared to other castes, and they have all these good qualities, and other castes are not having that good qualities and things like that. So that's a very, you can say, funny thing, that everyone believes that they are superior, and no one is ready to see themselves at this lower rank. And of course, no one is lower, no one is higher, everyone is equal as per our constitution, and that's how it should be in our real world as well. But anyways, these are all things that are part and parcel of development. We are in this transition phase from we are going through this change. So when we are going through a change, we have to go through all these issues and problems. Now, B.R. Ambedkar defined the term Brahminism, or this patriarchal, particularly this Brahminism, by he said that is not talking about Brahmins, right, as a caste or people, right. He was more about when he was against Brahminism, he was talking about this thing, that this particular ideology is against this spirit of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and that is the thing that needs to be removed. That's what B.R. Ambedkar said. Supreme Court talked about this thing, that one long-term solution is intercaste marriage and things like that. So I hope this whole issue is clear to you, why people are trolling him, because some people have took it as something against their caste, but it is not about any particular caste. It is more about a particular ideology that is not only targeting caste system, but also this gender inequality that we find in our society. Now, dear friends, war without end. Now, before we talk about war without end, let me throw some light on this one. Justice 34 years on. So it's about this yesterday's news item, that this Sikh riots that took place, anti-Sikh riots that took place in 80s, and two people, right, one is given with death penalty, and the other one is given life imprisonment. So after 34 years we are finding this justice, and a few days ago we were talking about justice delayed is justice denied. So delivering justice after this many years is again equivalent to of denying justice. So we know the reasons as well why we find this sort of this many years when it comes to justice delivery system. So you can associate things that we have discussed a few days ago with the items that you find here, and then you have this war without end, something that is again very common, or I'm sure we have this pre-existing knowledge about it, basic knowledge about this topic, war without end. It is about Afghanistan. I have explained things to you just a few days ago about the situation of Afghanistan. Like nearly 50% of territory is under government's control. It should be 100%, but 50% is under government's control, and there are a few patches where you have Taliban stronghold. There are a few patches where you have ISIS stronghold. Now, yesterday was Prophet Muhammad's birthday, so first of all, let me greet Eid Mubarak to all Muslim brothers and sisters. And I was so occupied in work, and I was again not feeling well as well yesterday too, but today finally I'm struck by this cold, fever and cough. But yesterday it was this a beginning phase, so I was not that much aware about this thing. I was in my room for the whole day, so in this the studio room, so I was not aware about what's going on outside. But anyways, belated Eid Mubarak. And there was a sort of meeting of clerics in Afghanistan, and this meeting was attacked by a suicide bomber. So what we are finding there is that Taliban is attacking on government officials, and ISIS is attacking this sort of religious gatherings. So things are a bit bad over there. And we know recently we had this Moscow format meeting between Taliban and various different stakeholders. So the question here is war without end. Is there any end to this war that is going on in Afghanistan? At present it looks like no, there is no end, particularly in near future. Long term, of course, there will be an end. That's what my optimism is telling me. But for short term, we don't find any sort of end to this war. Now, moving on to last item of the day. This one is Sabrimala. This one is about Asia BV. We have talked about both these items many times, so not going through it. But we can go through this one very quickly because, again, basic things. I'm sure we are aware about this thing because regular students, for 3-4 times I have explained this thing that was going on between RBI versus government, this whole issue. So on 19th November, there was a meeting between RBI board and RBI management, and finally, we know this thing that things are getting, back in line. Things are all right now. We are not going to use this section 7 of RBI Act. The government as well as RBI, they have sorted out this issue with the help of discussion, and now there are a few things on which things are being decided. So government is saying that RBI board, or this RBI board, the members of RBI board are saying that they will keep on passing available inputs and information, or you can say advice, to RBI management, and RBI management should try to at least go through this advice that is coming from RBI board, and if RBI management thinks that it's okay, then it should implement. So many a times we have RBI board is also right. So that's a sort of, at least RBI management should, or this RBI governor and his team should have at least one glance over suggestions coming from RBI board at least. Then some commentators were describing this raid the reserves sort of strategy of government to fill up its fiscal deficiency. So there are two types of reserves. The first one is revaluation. The second one is contingent. Now this contingent is more sort of emergency one. This revaluation is about adjusting this rupee dollar fall and rise. So these are the two types of reserves that that RBI is holding, and RBI has said that it would need this much money, and government is saying that they have extra more than enough money in reserve, so they should release, RBI should release a little bit of money. Then when it comes to capital adequacy requirements, RBI's requirement of capital adequacy is 1 percentage point higher than that of international Basel norms. So government is asking RBI to bring in line with this Basel norm. So these are the things that were discussed in this meeting. So again, repetitive things, but a quick revision. Let's go through important news items. This assembly of Jammu and Kashmir has been dissolved by Jammu and Kashmir governor. So hopefully we'll have a new election over there. Fresh elections will take place. USA's citizen has been killed by Andaman tribals, this Sentinelese tribe that lives in this Sentinel island. This person, John, he was trying to secretly enter this island, but he was killed by this tribal people, and this tribal people are protected under this Andaman and Nicobar Island Protection of Aboriginal Regulation 1956. Then we have two items associated with birds. Birds flee devastated Point Kalimere, and because of this cyclone Gaj, so many birds, nearly 2,000 plus birds were killed. And a first photo of Ortolan bunting. It's a bird that you can see on your screen. It's a migratory bird from Mongolia to Europe, and many times it goes from Africa. It reaches Africa via Middle East. So that bird has been spotted in our country. WTO panels to review US steel, aluminium and tariffs. You have to read these news items that I'm speaking here, right, about which I'm speaking here. You have to read full reports in the newspaper. Hunger may have killed 84,700 Yemen children, and 29,000 crore indirect tax evasion detected. So cases are being filed. These are your vocabs. This is your research topic of the day, right? Interpol, you can read here, and you can see a person here. So what it is all about. And these are your two questions. Once you download this file from my FB page or Twitter handle, you can go through the questions. That's everything in today's discussion. Sorry for my bad voice and not that great performance because of my ill health. But hopefully things will be alright. I'm going to see a doctor today, and should be okay in 1 or 2 days. So that's everything. Enjoy your studies. God bless you all. Jai Hind.